Nimrod. He appears in the book of Genesis as the first person described as a mighty hunter and a powerful ruler on the earth. His kingdom began in the land of Shinar and included famous cities like Babel and Nineveh. In biblical history, he represents the very first attempt by humanity to organize under a single earthly leader after the Great Flood. His legacy is often tied to the construction of the Tower of Babel, marking a shift towards centralized human power that eventually stood in opposition to divine authority. While the details of his reign are brief, he sets the precedent for what a king looks like in the ancient world, defined by physical strength and the ability to command vast numbers of people. Historically, he reflects the rise of the early Mesopotamian city-states that would eventually grow into the great empires of the East. His story matters because it establishes the theme of earthly kingdoms versus the kingdom of God, a conflict that persists through the entire biblical narrative.
Saul. He was the first official king of the United Israel, chosen specifically because the people demanded a visible leader to lead them into battle like the surrounding nations. Tall and impressive in appearance, he initially showed humility, but struggled with the immense pressure of his office. His reign is characterized by constant conflict with the Philistines and a deepening struggle with his own insecurities. His story serves as a transition from the era of tribal judges to a formal monarchy, highlighting the tension between the people's desire for a human ruler and their traditional reliance on spiritual guidance. His downfall eventually paved the way for a more stable and legendary dynasty. Saul's significance lies in his role as a cautionary figure, demonstrating that physical stature and military success do not necessarily equate to stable or righteous leadership.
David. Often regarded as the most significant king in the Hebrew Bible, he was a shepherd who rose to power after defeating the giant Goliath. He is credited with establishing Jerusalem as the capital and bringing the Ark of the Covenant to the heart of the nation. Unlike his predecessor, David is described as a man after God's own heart, though his life was marked by both great triumphs and deep personal failures. He unified the tribes of Israel and expanded the borders of the kingdom to their greatest extent. His reign established a royal line that biblical prophecy eventually linked to the coming of a future messianic king. His influence is felt throughout the book of Psalms, and his life provides a blueprint for the ideal, though flawed, biblical ruler. He matters because his dynasty became the standard by which all subsequent kings of Israel and Judah were measured. Solomon. The son of David, he is best remembered for his immense wisdom and for building the first permanent temple in Jerusalem. Under his rule, the kingdom experienced an unprecedented era of peace and massive economic wealth, largely through international trade and strategic alliances. He was a prolific writer and architect, attracting rulers from distant lands like the Queen of Sheba, who came to witness his splendor. However, his long reign also saw the introduction of heavy taxation and the influence of foreign religions, which eventually created the internal friction that would lead to the nation's split after his death. Solomon represents the peak of Israel's material and political power. His story is a complex study of how even the wisest of leaders can be led astray by wealth and political compromise, leaving a legacy that is both glorious and tragic. Hezekiah. He was one of the few kings of Judah praised for his devotion to religious reform and his efforts to centralize worship back in Jerusalem. During his reign, he faced the terrifying prospect of an Assyrian invasion led by Sennacherib, an event well documented in both biblical and secular history. To survive the siege, he ordered the construction of a massive underground tunnel to secure the city's water supply, which can still be visited today. His leadership is defined by a refusal to surrender to overwhelming odds, choosing instead to trust in spiritual intervention to protect his people from total destruction. Hezekiah is important because he represents the resilience of the southern kingdom of Judah during an era when many other nations were being wiped off the map. His life illustrates the practical intersection of faith, engineering, and military strategy during a time of national crisis. Nebuchadnezzar. As the powerful ruler of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, he is the most prominent foreign king mentioned in the Old Testament. He is famous for his conquest of Jerusalem and the destruction of Solomon's temple, which led to the exile of the Jewish people to Babylon. His portrayal in the text is complex, showing him both as a ruthless conqueror and a man who experienced profound personal transformation after a period of madness. He represents the biblical concept of an instrument used by providence to judge nations, and his interactions with the prophet Daniel provide a unique look at how earthly power interacts with divine sovereignty. Historically, he was one of the greatest builders in antiquity, responsible for the Hanging Gardens and the Ishtar Gate. His presence in the Bible matters because it frames the period of the exile, a defining moment in the development of Jewish identity and theology.
Herod the Great. He ruled as the Roman-appointed king of the Jews during the time of Jesus' birth, and is known for his ambitious building projects and his ruthless political survival tactics. He was responsible for the massive expansion of the Second Temple, turning it into one of the wonders of the ancient world. Despite his architectural achievements, he was deeply paranoid, which led him to eliminate anyone he perceived as a threat to his throne, including members of his own family. His reign illustrates the complex political landscape of the New Testament, where local rulers had to balance Jewish traditions with the overarching demands of the Roman Empire. He is a pivotal figure because his actions set the stage for the world into which Jesus was born, embodying the tension between earthly tyranny and the hope for a different kind of king. Jesus Christ. While not a traditional political ruler in the same vein as David or Solomon, he is identified throughout the New Testament as the King of Kings. His entry into Jerusalem on a donkey was a deliberate symbolic act, claiming kingship while rejecting the violent methods of earthly emperors. His reign is described as a spiritual kingdom that transcends borders and historical eras, focusing on the concepts of service, sacrifice, and redemption. In the context of biblical literature, he is presented as the ultimate fulfillment of the promises made to the early kings, providing a final resolution to the narrative of leadership and authority. He matters because he redefines the very definition of a king, moving the focus from earthly territory to the hearts and lives of people. His kingship is the central theme of the New Testament, contrasting with every other ruler who came before him.